conversion on tolls is simply practical politics. If you want to build transit, then you need the money. In a year-end interview, I asked John Tory about tolls, too many councillors, and his pesky seatmate on council. So what do you think when you walk through this little door and here we are it's the big top?
It's interesting. When people come in here, especially from other cities, they sort of view it as being as big as a parliament. It's big.
Are there too many of these seats? Some people suggest that we need to cut this down to make it more workable.
It's sometimes unwieldy. But you know what? I don't expect any votes to take place here where people are going to vote themselves out of a job. That's called human nature. We're to go back to square one and sort of say, what's the ideal size of this? I would have said something smaller than what will now be 47.
2016 has been a bit of a watershed year for you. This is the year that you've made your reversal on road tolls. This is going to define your administration.
I hope it will define it as being one that's about honesty in terms of saying to people, if you want the transit, which we so desperately need to fix traffic, and you want the transit plan that I put forward, we have to pay for it.
In 2014, you ran with a policy for transit, but you didn't say anything about road tolls.
I said it wasn't my preferred means of raising the money to pay for transit. But I got here and I had a choice to make. The choice was as between a massive increase in property taxes, like we're talking 10%. We're talking about the sale of assets, including Toronto Hydro, and some other method of raising money.
Aren't you going to create a two-tier transportation system where the poor have to drive on the gridlock streets and the rich can drive on the highway?
Do you know what we're going to create? We're going to create a system in which people who have lower incomes have a much cheaper, better way to get to work because there are going to be all kinds of transit options they don't have today.
This is your spot right here.
It is.
This is the key mayor's spot here. Let's talk about your seatmate. Mr. Mamalidi has been a bit of a thorn in your side recently.
Well, I mean, he engages in politics in a way that I guess has a certain, it's like a recipe. He has a certain number of elements of show business that he puts into it.
You recently, during the toll debate, it seemed like you kind of lost your temper a little bit.
No, I didn't. Oh, in fact, I was having fun.
That's what you said, or this has been the grossest misquotation in the history of Toronto politics.
I get frustrated at the fact we want to make decisions over and over and over again as opposed to getting on with doing some things.
Will 2018, both the provincial and the municipal election, be a referendum on this toll?
I don't think so. I think it'll be a referendum on a lot of things because elections always are. I think most often they're about the economy. And if you want to look at what we could do to really make sure the economy continues to grow, that people have a fair chance at opportunity in Toronto, one of those things is to build transit and fix traffic. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm just adding in the element that says you have to be honest and say how you're going to pay for it.
Mayor Tory, thanks for taking the time and best of the season.
Thank you. Same to you, Alan.
So you have a southeast side view of the city of Toronto. We're traveling 22 kilometers an hour.
Zooming up above the city, he is in charge of running. John Tory recalls watching Toronto's skyline morph into the icon it is today, with the construction of the CN Tower.
I remember when I was going to college and they were building it and the helicopter was putting the parts on to sort of raise it up.
40 years later, now as mayor of the city,
It's a whole different perspective up here.
the Toronto of 2016 is a very different place.
What jumps out to you when you look down at the skyline?
We've allowed all these towers to be built without paying adequate attention to the transit that we needed to go with them.
Building that transit has been a top priority for Tory, and paying for it led to one of the hottest topics of 2016.
I'm not doing it for fun.
Road tolls. The mayor admits to working the councillor floor at City Hall behind the scenes.
No, wait, please.
Well before he pitched the plan publicly.
Well, I had, but even if I hadn't done that, I think that had people been presented with that as a brand new idea the day of the council meeting, most of them would have said that they feel the same way I do, which is it's time for some honesty with people.
Also admitting to hearing backlash from drivers.
I'll be really honest with you about it. I mean, I know there are a group of people who disagree, and it's not 3 people. But, when I was in the Etobicoke Santa Claus Parade, there were 3 or 4 people from the big crowd of people that called out, no road tolls. So I heard that.
But saying he doesn't consider it a broken election promise.
It wasn't mentioned in a context of, do you promise never ever, or anything like that. And when it came up, I simply said it wasn't my preferred route.
But much of the money that will be generated from those tolls will now also go to repairing and rebuilding the Gardner, which the city recently revealed will cost $1 billion more than staff estimated it would just last year.
Is it unacceptable to you as mayor that your staff would have underestimated the scope of work, underestimated the cost of materials, and came up $1 billion short in the initial estimate?
I believe that if we asked the viewers of CTV, have they ever been through this experience with a house renovation or anything like that, and found that the bill changed, during or before the project even started, they would say yes, they've had that experience.
The section east of Jarvis alone will cost $500 million more to rebuild, but the mayor maintains it should not be torn down, even though he won the vote to keep that part of the Gardner up by a very narrow margin.
Now that we have this new information, the cost is so much more than we thought it was just a year ago. At what point do you consider reopening that debate in light of that new information?
I don't sense a huge groundswell from the public or from the council to reopen this, because I think they recognize, as I do, we reopened and redebated and redecided and then reopened again and redecided again all these issues on transit projects, on the Gardner Expressway, and a host of other things, and in the meantime got nothing done.
Onwards and upwards, he pledges for 2017 at City Hall.
You can almost see your office from here.
Almost.
A building dwarfed by the towers that surround it, but that holds the power to transform Toronto. Natalie Johnson, CTV.
Here are some of his answers. TTC fares slated to rise every year, yet so much critical work's unfunded. Can we expect more new revenue tools yearly?
I said when I ran for office that people should expect. I didn't keep the commitment that I made to freeze fares in year one. We actually brought in an increase, but that was to fund or help fund a $100 million investment in new services. But ever since then, I've said from the beginning, and I've been true to what I said, we would have a modest fare increase every year to cover the increased costs so that we could continue to maintain the services. So we're going to have to keep looking at where we get the money to pay for enhanced transit services, including for the disabled and Presto and all these things. But the modest fare increase each year is consistent with what I said, and I expect people should assume there will be one in most years going forward.
Okay, next question. 34,700 shifts were not filled in long-term care from 2012 to 2015. How is the mayor going to ensure staff are there for seniors?
Well, what I would want to start by doing, and when that number came out, the first thing that I asked was that I be given a report, which I haven't yet seen, that satisfies me that the level of care that is expected and that is required for our seniors, who are by definition, if they're in long-term care, vulnerable, is being met. Because it is possible that the number of shifts that are estimated, and it was an estimated number of shifts that were to be filled, that you found a way to do the job better or differently. I don't know that, and I guess I'll have to review the answer and see what it says.
Okay. Why is the mayor not cutting staff, sick time, and benefits, Viagra, if the city has no money?
Well, first of all, people should know, and they'll perhaps say, some of the same people who would ask that question would say it's not enough, but the actual staff of the city will go down based on the current form of the 2017 budget by 500 people. So I think it's going in the right direction.
We don't have enough streetcars this winter, so they're pulling buses off bus routes to run on streetcar routes, and people on buses on 13 lines are going to be sitting longer waiting for their bus as a result.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that hasn't been
I think people
greeted with more anger from this office.
Yes, I think people understand, Cynthia, that that is the fault of the company that's failed to deliver us the streetcars.
So is enough being done with Bombardier?
Well,
Has
what do you do?
the city pushed hard enough?
Yes, well, because you can't push them to produce streetcars faster. In other words, like nothing, I can't go up there and personally start tightening bolts.
Is there a point of no return, though, where you just say Bombardier's not going to come through?
Well, I hope we don't ever get to that point. And I've also said, and I think this is almost of more concern to them than anything else, that I will certainly be one who'd be suggesting we don't do business with them in the future if they can't get this fixed. You know, and they will, other cities in the world will listen to Toronto if we say, well, look, our experience was a disaster. I've asked Mr. Bryford, can you possibly find any buses anywhere else? Is there a city somewhere where they don't face this growth, or where they have a few extra buses sitting around we could rent from them? So he's looking at that now to see if there's anything more we can